Hola, buenos días. Buenos días. Bueno, para los que no me conozcan, soy Ricardo Millet, jefe de Análisis y Planificación de Turismo Valencia, que es el área que está organizando este ciclo de jornadas, de las que ya hemos hecho, esa es la segunda, nos quedan otras 3. Hemos escuchado hoy ya una conferencia muy interesante de una persona con tanto bagaje como es Óscar Perelli y hemos tenido la suerte de ver las opiniones y los planes de los máximos responsables de turismo de 5 de los grandes destinos urbanos españoles. Pero para acabar este acto habíamos pensado en llamar a alguien de fuera de España, ¿no? Porque vemos que el mismo debate que está surgiendo en los destinos urbanos españoles está surgiendo en toda Europa, en todo el continente. Y por ello hemos invitado a Jan van der Borg, que ha venido, aunque tenía bastantes dificultades, pero ha querido estar aquí con nosotros. Jan, además, es el profesor de la Universidad de Lovaina y de la Universidad de Venecia, de Economía del Turismo. Preside el Comité Ejecutivo del European Institute for Comparative Urban Research, es miembro del Comité Asesor de Visit Flanders, él es holandés. Como consultor ha trabajado para el Consejo de Europa, la Comisión Europea y la UNESCO, y además Jan es asesor de la ciudad de Venecia, del alcalde de la ciudad de Venecia, en temas de desarrollo de turismo sostenible. Entonces, hemos planteado este último acto como un diálogo entre Jan y María José Viñals, a la que muchos conocéis, porque es una catedrática destacada de la Universidad Politécnica. Ahora da clases de conservación del patrimonio y ciencias ambientales y anteriormente dio en turismo, por lo que alguno de vosotros la habéis tenido de profesora. Entonces, María José ha sido directora de numerosos títulos propios de la Politécnica en España y en 11 países del mundo. Sus temas de investigación giran en torno a la puesta en valor y planificación del patrimonio cultural y natural y ha trabajado en la interpretación y en la gestión turística de sitios patrimoniales en varios continentes. Después del diálogo dejaremos un poco de tiempo para alguna pregunta, aunque ya vamos justos. Entonces, bueno, dejo paso a Jan y a María José Viñals para que hagan su diálogo, que va a ser en inglés.
¿Ahora? Sí. Bueno, buenos días a todos. Muchas gracias por la amable presentación que ha hecho Ricardo Millet. Nosotros, como bien habíamos dicho y pensado, se ha hecho una presentación de la radiografía o de la situación de destinos urbanos en nuestro país, destinos muy destacados, pero también queríamos, es un fenómeno, este del turismo tiene unos rasgos comunes a todos los continentes, a nivel internacional, y queríamos también presentar un punto de vista que no fuera el nuestro, de nuestro país, que fuera de uno de los destinos turísticos más importantes del mundo, que lo tenemos aquí cercano, y el hecho de haber elegido la ciudad de Venecia en particular, de la que Jan nos hablará, es porque todos vosotros en vuestro cerebro tenéis un archivo abierto con el nombre Venecia y porque todos seguramente la habéis visitado y en más de una ocasión seguramente. Y aquellos que habéis tenido ocasión de visitarla con un lapso de tiempo importante, habréis visto esta evolución que ha experimentado la ciudad y que es lo que le vamos a pedir a Jan que nos cuente un poco. Y porque es curioso, porque vosotros en esta percepción que vais a tener la tenéis como turistas, no como residentes, y él os va a contar la versión que se maneja desde los organismos gestores y administrativos de la ciudad de Venecia. También, por supuesto, podrá aportar algunas informaciones. Él trabaja en los Países Bajos porque Jan es de origen holandés, entiende español un poco, habla italiano perfectamente y también habla holandés y inglés. Entonces, vamos a entendernos entre todos, seguro. Él va a hacer sus comentarios en inglés, pero luego las preguntas las vais a poder hacer pues, en cualquiera de estas lenguas que hemos comentado. Desde luego, si es holandés, lo tendremos un poco crudo todos, pero bueno, en las demás vamos a ir todos bien. Entonces, yo quería empezar preguntándole o pidiéndole a Jan que hiciera un breve resumen de lo que ha sucedido, de la evolución que ha experimentado la ciudad de Venecia en los últimos 25 años, por ejemplo, que es desde cuándo más o menos se tienen datos oficiales y fiables sobre el fenómeno turístico en la ciudad. Y luego ya pasaremos a ver qué medidas ha puesto en marcha la ciudad. Está claro que, como aquí se ha dicho, cada ciudad es un caso diferente y los problemas más evidentes son distintos y la manera de resolverlos también es diferente. O sea, en el turismo no hay recetas estándares que se extrapolen directamente a todos los casos igual. Hay una casuística muy grande, es todo muy transversal a muchos fenómenos y hay que tenerlos todos en cuenta y no son iguales en todos los sitios. Pero bueno, yo creo que es un ejemplo bastante ilustrativo del cual podemos aprender cosas, y yo creo que él también, oyendo todo lo que se ha hablado hoy, pues también ha tomado nota de todo lo que está sucediendo en España. Así es que, sin más dilación, yo le voy a pedir que haga una... if you can address some words about the current situation about the city in Venice in relation with tourism. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is it working? No, it isn't. It is? Okay. I will try to speak quite slowly and clearly so that you can all understand. I'm very sorry that I don't speak Spanish, some Italian. But first of all, I would like really to thank you for having me invited here in Valencia, which is a city that I've been visiting quite a lot in the past. And we continue from Venice to work together with the local authorities and university. So it is really a pleasure to be here. Just some history, because I think that is important to make you understand why I've been invited here. I'm studying urban tourism since 1986, and I was always studying two types of cities. The Venice type of city, Venice, Bruges, Salzburg, the smaller Sevilla, the smaller art cities, and how they were reacting on tourism, and also the bigger cities that were like willing to invest in the quality of life, in requalification, and in of course tourism development. The Rotterdam, Barcelona, Genoa, and Manchester kind of cities that were at that moment not so attractive for international visitors, but they were really seeing a lot of perspective in development. And what I now feel, and you were saying that before, is becoming interesting, is that the tourism industry and tourism demand is changing so fast that these cities, Barcelona, Berlin, maybe even Valencia in the future, are catching up. They seem to catch up with the Venice kind of cities, and they are increasingly sharing some of the problems. Of course, you cannot sort of just transfer one city's experience to the other cities, but they're catching up with the Venice kind of places, and they're experiencing the same kind of problems, the same kind of issues, and they are looking at the same kind of solutions. So this is, I think, one very important starting point, which makes it, of course, for many places in the world, interesting to look at what I would say a nightmare scenario, which is at this moment unsustainable tourism development in Venice. Now, just to describe very quickly what has happened in Venice over the last 3 decades. Venice has been visited by a lot of people. Venice is the emblematic kind of tourism destination. I don't know whether you saw the pictures of the cruise ships before. 2 of those pictures were of Venice, of Venetian cruisers. And what we have seen is that Venice has, in a very short time, developed from 10 million visitors per year to almost 30 million people per year visiting the historical center. Now, the historical center is very small for those of you who know Venice. There's now, at the moment, just 50,000 people living in the historical center, and that is down from 160,000 in the 60s. So Venice is increasingly losing inhabitants and is increasingly gaining visitors. It is not only a quantitative problem of the number of visitors that comes to Venice, but it's also a qualitative problem. We heard about sort of the value-added kind of tourism that Spanish cities are trying to attract. But what we especially see in Venice is that residential tourism remains constant. That is, the people that live as a tourist in one of Venice's hotels or bed and breakfast is remaining constant over time, and the growth in the number of visitors is especially in the excursionist sphere, people who come to Venice just for the day. And I would sort of count cruise tourism as a very aggressive form of excursionism as well. So at the moment, just 20% of the 30 million people that come to Venice per year, just 20% is staying in a hotel room. Now, this situation is frustrating the local economy, but is also frustrating Venetians, the inhabitants of Venice, because they really don't feel any empathy, they don't feel any connection with the people who come to Venice just for a couple of hours and flag Venice on their bucket list.
And tell something, Jan. In relation with these houses that are empty now, the people is not living more, the residents, what is happening with these kind of houses that are abandoned by the natives of the city?
Well, we have heard this also this morning, this conflict between visitors and, of course, locals is, of course, very much present on the local housing market. Because obviously in Venice, all the empty spaces that were abandoned by not only inhabitants, but also local artisanal activities, handicraft or industry, all these spaces have been filled up by tourism-related activities. And especially a lot of housing has been transformed into bed and breakfast. A lot of economic activities have been just substituted by low-quality, made-in-China kind of shops. Now, this, of course, is the impression that you get when you come to Venice. Venice is really looking like a very busy theme park, very busy Disneyland, but without the management of Disneyland, which is something I think the local administrators have to reflect upon.
My question, if this loss of the inhabitants is linked to the loss of identity of the city.
Yes. Now that is the consequence that I think we should be very careful about. I think local inhabitants are part of the DNA of a place, which is also something that visitors are increasingly looking for. We are now living in this experiential kind of tourism demand stage. So people actually want to get in touch with locals, but if there's no sort of local living in a place anymore, but it's just like staged kind of city life, then of course I think that Venice will in the end lose its attractiveness for an increasing part of the international tourist demand. Indeed, the added value residential tourism market is actually leaving Venice, is looking for other places to have their urban or city trips to. And that is a big threat to the continuity, not only of Venice, but also to Venice as a destination for tourism. Let me add something, because it's not only the fact that there's less housing for Venetians, but it's also a fact that there are no jobs for Venetians in Venice that actually do not want to work as waiters or cheap souvenir sellers and so forth. It's also a social, economical problem, and also this problem is fueled by the dominance of the tourism industry, which is actually sort of so powerful in Venice that there's no other activity in Venice that can compete with tourism for example, central space.
And could you tell something about what kind of measures, governance measures, from the local authorities are taken or are implemented to solve or to address these kind of problems?
I think the local administration has a very different colors of administration. I'm not sort of blaming one part or the other political part. I think they have a lot of responsibilities in the fact that Venice is now indeed becoming one of the world's sort of bad practices with regard to sustainable tourism. I think the local administration has always underestimated the risk of unsustainable tourism development. And what I see, and I see it in other places as well, also in Spain, is that they usually find a scapegoat, a black sheep, a symptom of non-sustainable tourism development to blame everything on. First of all, in the end of the 80s and the 90s, we had the Pink Floyd concert. That was, we have to event. Second was with the Berlin Wall being broken down, bus tourists from Eastern Europe, this was a dram, and we have to. Then it was cruise tourism. And now everybody is complaining about Airbnb. But these are all symptoms of a disease which is much more serious. It's really symptoms of the sort of the not planned, not organized way of allowing your place to live together with tourism development. And it has been mentioned a couple of times previously, and it was, I think, I have a slightly different vision. It's not the lack of management as such. It's not a too strong focus on just promotion and marketing. But I would say in most places, people thought that you just could leave tourism development to improvisation. And you just improvise. The market is going to solve all kinds of problems. Now this is not happening because the core, this is an economist speaking here, the core of the tourism product that destinations are offering are public goods. They are goods belonging to everybody. They are goods that are offered at a zero price, so everybody can. That's also a good thing. It's not only that. But this means, if the core is a public good, that as a local administration, you have to manage it, you have to plan, you have to control, you have to measure. And that has actually not happened in Venice. And the consequences are now so severe that the collective costs linked to tourism development are much bigger than the collective benefits that actually Venice is receiving per year. So here we have a very distinct mismatch that is starting to frustrate and irritate an increasing amount of people. And even the sort of the high quality part of the tourism industry is now teaming up with the local inhabitants to say, now enough is enough. Now let's look at the very specific measures. One of the few measures against tourism that has been taken in the 80s was a hotel stop. Now this is very popular as a measure also in many European places. I mean, one of the first things that the new mayor of Barcelona knew, it's not new and she's not new anymore, but one of the, we have to stop the expansion of the hotel sector. Now I saw some of the figures this morning, very interesting. If tourism demand for Spain is rising per year with 6 or 7%, and the number of hotel beds in the 22 most important cities are just rising with 1.5% per year, it is obvious that the increase in demand has to be satisfied another way. And ergo, Airbnb or excursionism is the consequence. Now, this is actually what happened in Venice. This 80% of excursionists that come to Venice, that is actually damaging the place much more than residential tourism, which is quality tourism. This expansion is the consequence of this hotel stop in the 80s and the 90s. So I would always advise places to be very careful with hotel stops. Obviously, safeguarding the apartments that are needed to maintain a livable, viable, and attractive city for people to stay and live in.
But, for instance, has the city a strategic plan?
Well, the city was forced to make a strategic plan because UNESCO was telling Venice, well, if you go on like this with the cruise ships, with excursionism, with all these rubbish kind of shops, we're going to put you on the blacklist. We're going to take you, you're going to become endangered World Heritage. Now, because of this menace, because of this threat of UNESCO, some people in the city go and they just put together a management plan which was absent for 35 or 40 years or so. They put it together, but this is all, I'm afraid, just a bureaucratic and formal response to a threat, rather than really willing to change the vision on tourism development and act accordingly.
And according to your point of view, what things and what measures are urgent to implement, according to your point of view as a technical, not as a
okay. Yes. So what I think is that it is without doubt, because I don't want to demonize tourism, because tourism is a very important economic activity, and if tourism is managed very well, it is really an engine for social and economic development, change, for jobs, for income, for new facilities and infrastructure that everybody benefits from. But you need to manage it well. Now, for me, managing tourism well is first of all, and we are doing that, for example, in the context of the Alta Eco project together with Valencia. First of all is measuring tourism in a modern way. And that means that we have to really get rid of this idea that in terms of arrivals and bed nights, we understand what actually happens. That was the quantitative kind of approach. We have to embrace open and big data kind of techniques to gather new data on new touristic phenomena, to manage tourism in a sort of almost real-time kind of way. We saw some pictures of mobile phone kind of data, but we are now scraping, for example, TripAdvisor data with a team from the University of Venice. We are scraping Airbnb, we are stealing data from those sort of social kind of phenomena to really understand what the people that visit Venice are doing. So this is for me the first, understand tourism, measuring it in a more comprehensive and in a real time kind of way. A second thing is to start informing people about a place before they come to visit you. I mean, I saw this Made in San Sebastian kind of brochure, which is really very interesting, but this is the stuff that you give to people when they're coming to the tourist office in the airport, or then you're already too late to start to educate, to inform, and to make... Yeah, you have to start informing people when they're at home. And I think that you should be doing that, trying to see whether you can invent some kind of reservation mechanism for people to your place. To book a visit to Venice is not so futuristic as it was 10 years ago. You have a very strong Valencia card, we have a Venice card, so why not sort of try to convince tourists that if they come to your place, whether they're sleeping with you or whether they're just visiting you for a day, they should at least announce their coming. We don't want sort of improvising kind of guests.
You can prevent and organize.
In change of that, you give them a lot of advantage. You may give them this discount card. If you come to Venice, you get a Venice card, and Venice is going to be easy and cheap. And so if you announce your visit, we, public sector administration, we can cater for your needs the best we can, and you will be really satisfied of your visit. Your experience will be... If you're not willing to do that, you can still come to my place, to Venice, but it's like when you're a host, and if a friend of you is just dropping in, he can't expect to have a full dinner with vodka and everything. So you may not have that in your home, but if he announces himself, you can prepare for that. Thirdly, I think we should also try to change because I'm very much in favor of residential tourism, and I'm very much worried about excursion. This is one of my red sort of threads in all my research, and I've been feeling and seeing confirmation of this in a lot of places that I've been working for. I think the tourism tax that is, for example, based on overnight stays is a wrong concept. I would really sort of tax people just for the movement they're making from somewhere in the world to my place, to Venice or to Valencia or whatever. I don't like the idea of punishing our value-added kind of clients and leaving sort of our day tourism, which are not staying in hotels but pay hotel taxes maybe 100 kilometers in the countryside, and I would also change, therefore, the tax base, which is traditionally on hotel beds, change that for a mobility kind of based tax. Last but not least, I really would, and that was also mentioned before, I would really sort of try to see whether I could do more for the non-touristical activities, whether they're residential or also economic, so that there is a counterforce, which is almost as powerful as the force that the tourism industry is putting in pushing and competing for central space. So, for example, in Venice, we are now very much investing in all kinds of activities linked with university education. See whether students and student housing can be put into place, and maybe find some economic activities that students then, after their studies, can start to work in, stay in Venice as an inhabitant, and just sort of keep the traditions, keep the heart of the destination as alive as possible. And I think this is also relevant for other kinds of places. We are doing and seeing the same in Bruges, where the city center, in Flanders, where the city center is without a heart anymore. It's just chocolate shops and lace shops and Belgian beer, but there's no sort of no, and I think that is no heart, no soul in the place, and that is in the end destroying everything. Not only the city, not only the citizens, not only the local industry, but also the tourism industry in the end.
Okay, so estamos un poquito ya fuera de tiempo.
Thank you.
Gracias.